So we've had lots of questions coming in. So I'm going to try and rattle through as many as I can for you both now. And let's see how we get on. So we've had quite a few, Chris, turn to you first. We've had quite a few questions relating to charging. So I'm going to try and bring some of these together so you can answer a few people at once. So we've heard from, we've got Paul Kirby's been asking about how important rapid charging capability is for vans to make them viable. He's asking sort of what your daily mileage is on average. And we've also had, in addition to the rapid charging question, a few questions around public charging. So Toby has said, great insights, Chris. What are the key challenges of relying on public charging for your van fleet? And then if I can also bring in a question in here as well, we had another one from Pete, oh, sorry, that one's for Peter, from Nigel Casey. But I think it's also one that Chris would be able to answer, which is what percentage proportion of your fleet is charged at home, at public network or at work. So Chris, if you can kind of think of an answer to those sort of 3 points at once, that would be brilliant.
No problem. So I'll do the best I can in the time that we've got. So we've to answer them not in the wrong order. So we're like a lot of companies. So our van drivers generally haven't got the luxury of their own driveway. So whether that's 60, 70% are going to have some form of either en route or on street or away from home charging. So that's something we're working with through our partners with. The first batch of drivers are predominantly home based. However, we've got a good number of the drivers, certainly with the latest vans that are on the road now, that don't have access to their own driveway. So we have then a mix of slow and rapid chargers. We have a preferred rapid charger and then a standby rapid charger. And some of our drivers have access to long stay council car parks, so overnight parking. So we paid for the parking ticket, annual basis, for instance, so they can charge 7 kilowatt overnight in certain locations, and they know the locations of the DC chargers when they need them. We have discounted rates on DC charging. I think that's important. Paul, I think it was you asking about the DC chargers. Some of the DC charging rates are really high. So we've got an amount built into our TCO model that we can't really go above that. It becomes uneconomical. So we're very aware of that, and we've done some pretty good negotiation with some of the more willing public networks to make that work. We're not going to solve this on our own. That's the thing I do want to say here. This is a collective thing that we need to work, with the right organisations who really get this, who understand that there is a need for a fleet like ours and many others, do things slightly differently for those drivers that haven't got the luxury of their own driveway. So apologies if I've kind of rambled on there, but there was hopefully covered a few points.
Yeah, that's brilliant. Thanks, Chris. And Peter, that last point, what are you seeing with the percentage of where people are charging their fleets? What sort of feedback are you getting, and what are you preparing for on the public charging, work charging, home charging sort of front?
Yeah, evidently much easier to charge an electric vehicle if you've got off-street parking, and that's still going to be for early adopters the easiest source. And you can imagine, as we turn back to workplaces more frequently, workplace charging will be another option open to people. And then, we fully advocate the need for better public charging, on-street charging in particular. Our concern as an OEM is that at the moment, very much like Julia mentioned, electric vehicles are more accessible to the affluent. If you've got off-street parking, it's very easy. So we are, big advocates of the need to get better public charging infrastructure and on-street charging infrastructure. We think that's particularly important for the electric LCV market, and for fleets like Chris's, when Centrica vans are needing to be operational, and they're not always going to be at home. They need to be out and about, and they're going to need access to public infrastructure charging. So the more that's about, the better. But we've got all confidence, and we've seen all the statistics. It's growing, and it will get stronger. Market factors will grow it. as there are more electric vehicles on the road, there'll be more demand for charging, more commercial opportunities for electric charging infrastructure suppliers to place that infrastructure on streets and in public places.
Very interesting. We've also had a couple of questions through. I'm going to, again, try and group a couple of questions here to make sure that we can answer everybody. We've had a few questions around sort of the theme of upskilling people. So we've heard from Amanda Brandon, who's asked about Chris specifically about whether you've been having to train your drivers to get used to driving an EV. And then also Jean Hay has asked about problems. Are there any problems with the speed of upskilling technicals for servicing and repairs, which I think, Peter, you'd also be able to come in on as well. So maybe I'll go to you, Chris, first, and then Peter.
Yeah, great question. Yeah, training, really, really important. We've seen huge value out of training our drivers. If you think of that, they're coming from a place of a manual diesel van to it's not really an automatic, but a van without gears that is electric, and you really have to drive them in a different way to get the best out of the technology, I will say. So choosing the right drivers, as I've said, is really important. But we've got our own bespoke training workshops that all of our drivers go through to get the best out of the technology. And then for certain drivers, we'll have direct one-to-one training just to make sure they really understand how to get the best out of them. So don't drive it like a manual diesel van is what I'm saying. But one of the things, just to make it a little bit more real, is that we use online. We've got an internal Yammer channel, and one of the things that the engineers do, they compete with each other on who's the most efficient driver, who can get 2.5 miles per kilowatt hour. One guy was saying he got an extra 18 miles going down a particular hill in Worcestershire. He says, "Oh, hey, make sure you can use that one if you can." So again, the mindset of these early adopter drivers is super important. But training, we do that rigorously, and we do it in-house.
Great. Nothing like a bit of competition, healthy competition to spur people on. Peter, do you want to come in on this?
Yeah, Chris's answer is brilliant. And we see similar things across other fleets as well, where it really is about piloting. I don't think any fleet's successfully done this on scale without a pilot. You trial it, you find advocates, you make it work. Word of mouth then really helps. And those people that have used the electric vehicles first, and maybe you have to invest in some training for them and support them through that transition. But if that's a positive transition, that positive word of mouth goes to other drivers. So we see it just really building out, finding advocates from a pilot. In point to the SMR piece, the thing we do see is that the service and maintenance on a battery electric vehicle, whether it be a passenger car or a van, is much simpler than an ICE. So I guess there's other benefits around reduction in downtime. That battery electric vehicles ultimately will have lower service and maintenance than a plug-in hybrid. From that point, that there's less that can go wrong. Pilot's really helpful. But and these are some of the experiences that fleets that are proactively trialing and piloting are learning. What is downtime of an ICE versus an EV, and how do I operationally optimize them?
Great. I'm going to ask one last question. I'm conscious that I've not been able to go through everybody's questions, so perhaps I can ask you both if afterwards you feel free to have a look in the questions and do some answers directly as well. Just conscious of time. But I'll just ask one final question, which is from Patrick Hall, who's asked, do you think the government should adopt a UK ZEV mandate or retain existing EU-derived CO2 standards and make these more stringent over time? Chris, shall I go to you again first?
Peter's probably a better place to answer that. From an officially perspective, I've got my own personal opinion, but I'll let Peter answer that. Okay,
I know that mandates are an interesting topic at the moment. Peter, do you have any views that you can share on that?
We accept the government mandates as they are. I know you asked an earlier question about the plug-in car grant. Yeah, we would like it to last as long as we could and be as generous as we could. But we're more or less accepting of the changes. We agree, and I think you had a great answer on that from Julian in terms of benefit in kind makes a big difference. And you've got some strange things at the moment where you could have £100,000 Porsche and pay less company car tax than a Ford Fiesta. So I think the top of the market's very much supported. The plug-in car grant is now more concentrated on the lower end of the market. I think that makes a lot of sense. We support the 2030 government mandate, and we want to help support fleets getting there. Evidently, it's going to be more challenging on electric LCV than it is on passenger cars, just because of the variety of issues we've talked about through supply and number of manufacturers playing in that space, and the greater complexity of those fleets to transition. So yeah, we would accept and support the government mandates as they are, and the incentives that are in place. And probably the thing we would be pushing for is more incentives and support for electric LCV, because we think that's particularly important. And then the things we've all collectively talked about in terms of public charging infrastructure to enable those fleets to operationally perform with less disruption.
Brilliant. Thank you both ever so much. We've run out of time, well, even overrun over time, but there's been so many questions and so much great insight there. If I can just ask you, like I say, if you want to have a look at some of the questions we didn't get to in the Q&A, then please do feel free to carry on those conversations there. But thank you, Chris and Peter.